What up, peeps? All right, well, I just made a podcast rather, and video accompanying it that will be uploaded sometime in the future. The link may or may not be available depending on whether I like it, but the podcast will be up on my 15-minute free thinking podcast channel, which is separate from YouTube. So if you're unaware of that, you need to go check it out. And there's hundreds of, well, 100 and something podcasts on there over the last few years. And so this is a condensed version of the podcast that I just did, because since it won't be shared for a while, I just wanted to cover some thoughts, starting with, I feel like I'm going crazy sometimes. And the way I worded it was, is the world completely fucking insane right now, or is it just me? Now, most of you will say, of course, it's crazy out there, you know. People are getting upset about the weirdest things and fighting over the dumbest shit, and our politics and all of our concerns are just ludicrous right now. Yeah, of course that's true. But hasn't that always been the case, to some extent? Unless you've been living under a rock, you know, you've basically been exposed to everybody and everybody's thoughts. Whereas even when I was a kid, you could isolate yourself from these things, whether you chose to or not. You know, we lived in our communities. We learned what we needed to learn from our local news. Then the 24-hour news hit, then world news, and the next thing you know, everybody's in everybody else's business. So I start asking myself, am I just losing my mind because I'm getting older and I'm seeing things that I've always known were there, but are starting to actually bother me and affect the way I do my life now? In other words, when you're young, you just go about your life and say, yeah, the world's fucked. As you get older, let's say you want to start your own business, but you're stopped by permitting fees, and you find out these fees were created by companies so they can have no competition. So they make the entry really difficult to something super simple. And there are tons of, you know, I think it was like salons in California was a great example. Like this group of hairdresser, like this union, like passed legislation through lobbying to make it very difficult for, and adding training for other people to join their field. This happens everywhere. But the point I'm making, the bigger point is why, one of the things that drives me nuts is the way that people out there, the sociopaths in our society, make everybody look like fucking assholes. And you might be one of them, you know, and not even know it. And that's the thing. A lot of people, if your business is based around abusing other people's money, and even if you're lying, what you might call, well, just fibs, or that's business. And if one of the lines you have to use in your business is, well, that's just business, it's probably a bad business. You know what I mean? Because a good business can justify itself, its existence in the world, its value. And what's happened is when we stopped making products and started making software and data and ideas, this became a completely different world. We, not just because we had the technology like computers and cell phones, but because the way that these things are marketed is completely different. You might start a business based on an idea that never even comes to fruition and make billions of dollars before you even provide a product. And so it's this extremely fast-paced competitive world that we're living in right now. And meanwhile, the average Joe just wants to be able to make a paycheck and survive. And folks who are so out of touch with each other's realities, because the average worker, you know, has no idea what it's like to be a multimillionaire, and vice versa, unless that multimillionaire, of course, was poor at one time. But we don't understand each other's stories, we don't understand each other's needs, and we don't even ask. Just like the wealthy may look down on the poor as the, quote, useless eaters, which is a real quote, by the way, those useless eaters may have this idea of eat the rich. No pun intended, but that worked out. And the fact is, I was arguing for the wealthy people the other day in a debate, talking about how, you know, distributing wealth, and how there are people who, the custodians of wealth in this world, right? This is what I think Manly Hall used that. He said, you know, you don't have money. Money has you, as some say, but you are a custodian of that wealth. And if you're a wealthy person, the only way to define you being wealthy is to have your gardens, to have your buildings, beautiful things. All these things are made by average people. And there are average workers and their families who depend on them. A lot of wealth creates more wealth because it's just money. What we're looking at is a problem of resource distribution between people. But even that's more complicated. It's not that we just can't send aid to an area that needs it because we don't have it or have the food or the resources. It's because of logistical issues or wars and the fact that humans are fucking ludicrous. And the other sociopaths, well, the sociopaths that are in business are just working to supply the psychopaths that are in power or in high military ranking with the supplies and weaponry they need to go over to other countries and supply them with weaponry to kill civilians. I couldn't put it any plainer. If you know, it's funny because this debate about civilian casualties in war isn't even a debate. You know, there are some things that I understand are nuanced, right? But the Geneva Convention is not that nuanced. It's you do your best to avoid civilian casualties, right? And so many countries just don't care. They're willing to, and it takes a psychopath to take an innocent life. And I know that seems like a little off track, but that's the reason I'm talking about these things, is because why I'm going insane is seeing average working people living in a community, feeding their kids, going to church, whatever it may be, just living their lives, going to see the drag race, going to concerts. And meanwhile, over here, your tax dollars are being sent to these factories to build these giant bombs that are then being sent overseas to another country and dropped on people just like you in neighborhoods just like yours, with people who may be slightly different colors, or God forbid, the same color. And when you look at it for what it is, it's like, these are just such obvious things that we've grown. It's the fact that we've been exposed to this our whole lives, that it's never been any different, is especially why the younger generations don't really see it as anything different. They might be opposed to war itself, but if you've never known a time of peace, then it seems like the whole world is just a fucking lunatic, that everybody out there is just looking to kill one another. And I want to say that is just not the case. And the fact that we have been convinced and lied to for so long that the world is scary, that if you look away for a minute at the park, your kids are going to get taken. You know, you're like, who the fuck wants your kids? Yeah, it happens. But how often does it happen? You know, letting your kid run around the neighborhood. Oh, no. You know, a helicopter parent until they're 18 and don't let them experience anything. There's a lot of abuse. Sure, there are a lot of clergy out there and a lot of people in high positions of power that do take advantage. But that's, my point is that the overwhelming majority of people are good people who mean well, who don't harm others and never would harm another person. And I know this because I'm one of them. However, I would say if I was put in any position, if I was stuck in a position where I had no choice, naturally I would adjust to whatever environment I have to. The fact that I don't have to kill or harm other people is because I mind my own business and I don't want other people's stuff. But if you don't value human life and other humans' needs, I feel like you're wrong. You know, if you don't have empathy for other people, there is something wrong with you internally. I feel that strongly. There are many different types of humans and many different ideas. I thought about this the other day, that the kind of person who's going to be a construction worker and the kind of person who's going to be clergy are going to be different mentalities. Doesn't mean they couldn't do each other's job, but one person may be highly focused on one thing and somebody else is highly focused on another. Maybe their bodies or their brains are actually developed differently for these things. We know that if you play music your whole life, one part of the brain actually gets larger. It changes shape. And that it's neuroplasticity is the word for it, but your brain changes to what you do. So yeah, there are many different types of people doing many different types of things, which means that you're going to have many different ideas and values and opinions, even politically, that might maybe diametrically opposed yet both right for that individual. But empathy is not one of those. There is no, well, this person doesn't need empathy because, I mean, I think that empathy is what keeps us from killing each other. And when we lose that, whether we never had it, it's detrimental. Anyway, those are just some brief thoughts that I had on this, and I suppose this could turn a lot longer if I wanted it to. Naturally, I didn't bring up the war in the original podcast, any of the war stuff, but that just popped into my mind because I've been watching, all of this bullshit unfold in the Middle East, and I'm absolutely disgusted. And disgusted by the way that the West is behaving in full support of what's happening to, in Gaza. And instantly, if I have this debate with somebody, they'll start bringing up Hamas and, so what, do you support them? No, I don't. I don't support anybody who harms innocent people. But the problem is when it keeps happening over and over purposefully, that's when, nobody is innocent. When eye for an eye leaves the world blind, right? So my father fought in Vietnam. His father and my other grandpa fought in World War II. And none of them were happy for it. None of them thought it was worthy, even though World War II was an exception, a lot of people would say. But the U.S. entered it late anyway, and we still killed a lot of innocent civilians. Don't forget those 2 giant bombs that we dropped, so nobody's innocent in this. But it takes a complete psychopath to drop a nuke on a town. That's just amazing to me. And naturally, of course, even the pilots didn't really know what they were carrying. Nobody had really seen any kind of power like that to that point. But what a world, my friends. What a world. What a crazy year. What a crazy century. What a crazy last century. I mean, here we are. Here we are, trying to navigate into the future. Anyway, that's all I got for today. Peace and love. And I will talk to you on the next one. As usual, I have no interest in supporting companies or ads. So if you want to support the channel, you can visit me on Patreon. There are some extras and stuff there. Carpo719. And also check out the podcast, 15-Minute Free Thinking. And I will see you next time. Peace out.